Hey YouTube, I just wanted to get a little practice filming, so here's today's job. This is a 24 Terrain. These are known for having PCV system freeze and cause the rear main seal to blow out. As you can see here, we got lots of oil coming from in between here. Pretty nasty. So I got my customer to check with the dealership, and even though this is a 2014, it's not under warranty because we are on the west coast of Canada or something, and they're warranting East Coast and America. I don't know, sounds bogus, but we're gonna go ahead today and pull this transmission, and then we're also going to pull the valve cover to clean up the baffling and the PCV system, and then we're gonna pull the intake and address the PCV from that side too. So yeah, we'll see how it films. So just taking out the basic stuff, get the battery out first, kind of taking a look around at how I'm gonna do this. Subframe has to come out to get the transmission out, and the hardest part, it looks like, is gonna be the exhaust that curls underneath the subframe up to the back. And it's a manifold with a cat all in one piece. So since I'm taking the valve cover off anyways, I'm just gonna start kind of stripping wiring harnesses on the top end, get all this stuff out of the way, unbolt the top bolts to the bell housing from the transmission. The rad is supported by the subframe, but I'm gonna hang the rad up so I don't have to open the cooling system beyond any cooling lines into the intake, which hopefully I can just plug off. Yeah, just keep taking stuff away. So happy days here. I got the access to the back here, and you can see the exhaust is actually two-piece, so that's great. I wasn't sure if I'd have to unbolt it from the head, but I don't. There's just 3 bolts right there. I'll put a little heat to them maybe, and I mean, everything else came apart really easy. I got these little shield bolts off, no problem, nothing broke there, and I had to take the O2 sensor out to get the heat shield up. Otherwise, I was risking bending something or scratching a wire open. Otherwise, making a little bit of progress here. And I'm just keeping my parts kind of methodically in a pile. But all my hardware I keep with everything, right? So I don't have to go around labeling crap, and every bolt goes where it goes. As long as you don't have any bolts left when you're done the job, success. Let's carry on. Okay, I'm just about done on the top end here. There was 2 bell housing bolts I could find. They were a bit of a chore to get to. So this one had a ground strap on it. It was on this side underneath the thermostat housing, and this one over here on the front. 18 and 15 for the nut. So I got the radiator just kind of supported with some mechanics wire here, just kind of around the shroud, which is bolted in, and then to the mount up here. I think that'll be good enough. I got that on both sides. And I'm just going to go and grab my engine support bracket up there, big blue. Find a area to support this, and then we can move on to the downstairs. And probably one thing I'll show you guys, always make sure that you lock the steering wheel when you get the, we're gonna take the rack out, so we can't have the steering wheel swinging one way or another once it's freewheeling. Your clock spring will go goodbye. I just like to run the steering. Sorry, this is banded. Sorry, that was a chore to do with one hand. So I run the seat belt through the steering wheel and back in and latch it down. And that'll just, when the steering gear underneath is unhooked, that'll prevent this from freewheeling and then screwing up the airbag inside with the clock spring. So at some point, don't forget to do this. I might be doing it a bit premature, but since I'm on a hoist, I can work pretty easily underneath this thing. So the wheels can stay in a straight head position, and that's good enough. All right, back at it, getting close. So I think I'm done here under the hood, except for the strut tower bolts there that I'll come back for when I'm ready for that. Hook the engine support bracket up. I found a grade 8 bolt down there that goes straight into the cylinder head, so that's good enough to hold their weight. And I got the engine mount out there. Didn't really have to take this out. I just kind of loosened it and moved it around so I could reach all the bolts. I got this one transmission line off and plugged. The other one runs back, so we're going to do that from the bottom. I got the all the electrical, I think, undone. Shift tower, or the shift cable, sorry. Yeah, I think that's about it. And I did get the bolts off the back for the exhaust. They came off no problem with a little bit of penetrating oil. I let sit for a bit, no heat or anything. Yeah, it's just steady progress. Let's get this in the air. So looking at this, I have to get the axle shaft out here. So I think I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the strut up in there. And I'm going to undo these two bolts right here. Take the sway bar link out. These are cam bolts here, so just make sure you notch or you mark them. This is for wheel alignment, so you can get it really back to where it came from. Do that there, and I'll do different color there. I'm gonna hang the caliper so I don't have to do any hydraulic lines or anything. Take that off in one assembly. And then mirror it for the other side, and then we'll take a look at the steering rack and see what I want to do. Okay, so this side came apart pretty easy actually. On the caliper bracket up through the strut there. No stress on the hose. ABS cord here, or the ABS sensor. I never try to pull these things out. They break like 80% of the time. So just pull the wiring harness out. That came out good. Axle came out smooth actually. I removed this with actually put a Allen in the center and spun it out with an 18 mil. Keeps the ball from spinning inside. And if you take an impact gun to these, what generally happens is the socket inside this housing spins and it just destroys the sway bar link. Let's see. These cam bolts were not quite the cam bolts I thought they were. Thought there'd be a bit more adjustment on this, but either way, I'm in the habit of just marking everything, and generally these are adjustable. These had to get hammered out. They were grooved in there pretty good. These bite, so I'll make sure you put this down, and then I use my air hammer right in the center and just knocked it out like that. You don't want to mushroom this bolt, and that way you can still get your nut back off, and if there's a tiny bit of mushrooming, you'll correct it. So I'm going to go ahead and hammer out the other side, and then we can carry on. But yeah, pretty straightforward. Hey you guys, just show you where we're at. So we got this side apart, this axle out. I drained the transmission fluid and I captured it to measure it. Just saves a little bit of time going back together. Gets you closer to the level. Man, this thing is leaking so bad. I was cleaning up drips the whole way back, but now it's all the way back to the muffler spraying oil, so vehicle won't need to be undercoated ever. It'll be rust proof now. Kind of looking at how I'm going to do this. You can see the subframe goes up over our all-wheel drive transfer case. The exhaust has to come out. Looks like there's just one bolt left holding the exhaust. Where'd it go? Over here. I'm going to undo these two and see if I can wiggle the exhaust out with the cat. If not, I will ratchet strap the back, pull the back an inch or so back, and then I'll be able to get it out. Front drive shaft here, I'm just going to undo this side of it and swing it off to the side and support it. And then I just need to get the all-wheel drive transfer case out, and then one bolt up there for our steering shaft, which is easy to get right here. And a few more electrical connections for the steering rack. And that's about it. I think we can drop this after that, so see how easy the transfer case part comes apart. All right, so as you can see, we got the transfer case out. Getting the exhaust out was a bit of a chore. This bracket was stopping it from dropping down, and this bolt was pretty darn hard to get to, but whatever, one bolt, get that off. Transfer case. So for the transfer case, this little guy right here was bolted like this to the block. You're not getting that out without getting this one out. And then there was, this is the engine mount. There's a hidden one in there too, don't forget that. And then two on the bottom. But this thing is throwing oil like, what's the breather? Oh. Yeah, I think the flex plate's throwing oil kind of everywhere. Cool, we're getting close. So now, some more bell housing bolts. Give you guys an idea what it looks like if you're trying to get into this yourself. Bell housing bolt here, here. I have to get the starter, and we'll get the torque converter bolts through the starter hole. And another mount. Now I can at least reach, there's tons of room for activities in here now. And I can't forget that front, or that other cooler line right there. Yeah, I should have the subframe out soon. I got a late start today, so it's almost dinner time. I'll probably drop the subframe and maybe the transmission, we'll see, and then pick it up tomorrow. Okay, we got the main seal out. It came out a little bit more of a chore than typical. Usually it's that technique works within like 1 to 2 tries. So what you would do is you take a sharp punch, you try to really gently puncture a hole. You have to be super careful you don't touch the crank and you don't touch the housing, so there's not a lot of meat on this seal to do this either. Puncture a hole, then you take a screw in and use a little pry bar to relieve it, and it'll just pull the seal out. This one, I think what had happened is, well, the seal had blown apart. I fished this out from behind the crankshaft. It was actually wrapped around the crank. Fished that out with a hook. But what had happened here is this inner seal had blown out, and I think it created an even tighter press against the actual crankshaft, because these usually come out much smoother than that. So not super happy with how that came out, but at the same time we didn't damage the crank, didn't damage the housing, and a little patience and perseverance pays off. I actually ended up taking my punch and grabbing just the edge without touching any of the aluminum housing and hammering it in to try to deform this shape. Sometimes when you can deform something like that, they just come out a bit easier. And yeah, so we're going to take the new one here and put this in. Make sure you read your manufacturer instructions on these seals. So this one, rubber and PTFE seals go in differently. Manufacturer recommends no silicone, and PTFE seals actually go in dry, even on the sealing surface. Rubber, you can put a bit of oil just to lube it to help it go in. So to press these in, or to put them in, we'll take this over to my Autometer drawer. And I like to keep these old bearing races, and they just have a lot of uses for putting seals in. So that'll work nicely. We'll give that some light taps and that'll seal that in perfectly. At some point in my life, somebody told me never to hammer on bearing races as they could shatter, and you know what? I've been lightly tapping on them for over a decade and nothing's happened to me, but I imagine taking a sledgehammer would be a bad idea. Nonetheless, we'll wear safety glasses as always, and this should go back together pretty smooth. So, you know, I looked over some of the filming last night, and this is just too long of a video, I think. I'm not sure if I'm gonna film the reassembly of this entire thing, but I will make a part 2 video for the valve cover gasket and cleaning out the baffling, and then the intake and doing the TSB that they recommend. I think it involves drilling out a passage in the intake or something like that. So I'll actually look that up when I get to that point. But yeah, I guess final kind of thoughts on this job is it's a pretty big job for a DIYer. So if you have this issue on your vehicle at home and you're kind of thinking, can I avoid paying a mechanic shop to do this? And you know, I have somebody that's mechanically inclined that can deal with this for me. Yes and no. If you have the equipment like I have with a hoist and everything like that, this is a really easy job. It's not a technical job by any means. The only real risky part, I think, is getting that seal out without damaging the crank. The rest of it's just all basic work. I've done lots of work before I had hoists and before I had any equipment on the ground, and I've done jobs like this where you pull the subframes out and pull trannies and do stuff like that on transverse and front wheel drive setup. So it can be done, but you're going to be sore trying to do it. I think at a minimum you're going to want, let's see, you're going to want your vehicle like jacked up with at least probably 18 inches of clearance off the ground from the oil pan to get the subframe out. You could get this out with a jack. What I would have done if I didn't have a hoist is I would have left the front engine mount on. Where did that go? This bad boy right here. I would have left this on and done everything else the same. And then I would have got the subframe out with a jack and pulled it out on the floor. And then I would have went and supported the engine with a jack with a block of wood, because you never want to jack on aluminum like that. So get a supporting jack with a block of wood on the engine, and then I would remove that top mount, and then you could have dropped the engine just enough to wiggle the transmission out with a partner or something. So it can be done, but it's just a fair bit of labor. You'll be sore as hell if you try doing this on the ground. So yeah, let me know, it's my first time kind of filming something and just playing around with the camera and playing around with the editing as well, just trying to practice. This happened to be the job in my shop the day I decided to try starting this. Wasn't really planned out. But I do lots of random fixes. If you have any comments that could help me, advice for the filming, the editing, I think some of my lighting was off and some of the filming's jittery, but yeah, I guess you just got to practice to get used to it. I'm going to go ahead and throw up a torque spec sheet at the end of this video, I think. So anybody that is not put off from trying this on their own, they can have the torque specs to do everything properly. Don't forget to use Loctite. Make sure you're Loctiting flex plate bolts, torque converter bolts. Yeah, not that bad. Just a lot of components.